Cruise ship employees out there, what are some things that we may not know about your job? What happens below decks? I am an engineer on merchant ships. Haven't worked a cruise ship, but I know plenty of guys that have. They pack the waitresses and therefore to a room so they will sleep with an engineer just to get some alone time. We get our own room. A relative worked on a Carnival cruise ship for a bit. He said that the #1 rule was that staff were not allowed to have sex with passengers. He also said that one of the perks of working for Carnival was the ability to vacation on an island Carnival owns and apparently reserves, mostly if not exclusively, for its employees. Damn it, I'm late. Nothing crazy, but my family befriended the piano guy on our cruise and he would get us half off drinks. Then my brother and him fricked. That was when I found out my brother was gay. Your family pimped your brother for discounted drinks. I had a solid gig playing on a cruise line for a couple summers as a jazz musician. I played with a house quartet every night for 3 months. Here are some things you may not know about the job. 1. Almost every employee smoked weed. When we weren't performing or sleeping, we were toking like there was no tomorrow. It was a great way to pass the time. 2. Disease spreads incredibly fast. There were a couple episodes of a stomach flu taking over the ship. It was so bad I thought we were going to have to get the CDC to disinfect the ship. Overall, it was a really fun job for the summer. Pay wasn't spectacular, but I got to go to awesome places, meet new people, and play nightly gigs. You may have played with a good friend of mine, stand-up jazz bassist, Tour AD the Holland Cruise Lines, I believe, but even though he smokes, 2, he had to end this okay paying gig because they started threatening to test his pee for drugs. Ex-cruise ship employee here. We get absolutely s-faced below deck. Everyone fricks each other, all over the ship. My girlfriend at the time and I had a competition with an officer and his lady for the riskiest place to have sex. I thought we had won with the bow of the ship in the middle of the night. Nope. Him being an officer stopped the elevator midway. His lady and him jumped on top of the elevator while it was stopped and proceeded to ride the elevator and get it on as guests were getting on and off the elevator beneath them. Okay, this blew up. To clear a few doubts and answer a couple of questions. The officer was not alone in his efforts. From what I know, he had a friend of his on the bridge stopping the elevator for him, so they could get in position, if you will. I assume he was also making sure the elevator did not crush them as well. He could have been lying, but for the story's sake I like to think that's how it went down. Secondly, I was a dancer in the cast on board and had a lot more free time than most, being all I did was perform in the shows. I do suggest working on ships for anyone who is curious. It's a great way to see the world, make lifelong friends, and get laid. I know many couples who met on a ship and are married with kids now, etc. It really sets the stage for a nice fling, or love, depending on where you're coming from and what you're ready for. The crew bar was absolutely a place of drunken adventures, cheap booze, and smoke. Everyone smoked. Crew members were from all over the world, and each night was themed to a different culture's music, etc. I loved it. Being an 18-year-old from Texas, I learned more from the international crew than I ever could have imagined, and I'm very thankful for the experience. All in all, I highly recommend it, at least for one contract. If you don't like it, chalk it up as free travel, free accommodations, and a job. I could see this going horribly wrong and someone winning the Darwin Award. I'm in a Dutch maritime academy and I did my first internship on a Holland America Line cruise ship, August 2012 February 2013. Although I heard a lot of stories from the other officers and engineers, things were generally pretty good. No fights, no drama, just people drinking a beer at night and working most of the day. The days were pretty long and 12 hours for crew regardless of rank. I slept with a roommate in a bunk bed and so did the Filipino and Indonesian crew. The officers and engineers get their own cabin. Although I didn't get a lot of free time in ports, I had some pretty good days. I had a good time. The only reason I won't be going back is the 4 months on 2 months off working schedule. My dad worked as chief of security on cruise ships for 5 years, and I spent several months traveling with him while he was employed. Most captains are pompous buttholes who treat the men of foreign workers like crap, and often don't respect the officers either unless they're from the same county, usually Dutch. The majority of staff are Filipinos and Indonesians, and are very nice but overworked. The quarters for staff who aren't officers are very cramped and they often spend 8 or more months out on a ship with a bunk bed in a 4-person room. The crew aren't allowed to eat with guests, officers can, and have a separate mess hall with lower quality food, still not bad though. Most officers choose to eat in the officers lounge to avoid guests, and they can have food from the main dining hall delivered to the officers lounge. Even as an officer, the amount of time off you get is very low. You don't get to go out and see the ports very much. Days are usually at least 10 hours of work for months on end. Any specific questions, just ask. I am a cruise ship worker. First one is, we don't want you to know that we actually have more fun than the guests. Sure, we'll work the big white hot party that you're all going to, but once we finish our shift all heck is breaking loose in the crew bar. Just below and to the sides of where you are sleeping there are crew members having sex, smoking and drinking. Our beers are $1. No drugs or spirits though. We also don't want you to know that all those funny jokes we tell you at bingo, yeah, same ones are said every single cruise. That really funny answer you gave us about your wife during the happy couples game? Heard it. It was said last cruise and the one before that, and the one before that. We are not allowed to frick to passengers, but we do know all the nooks and crannies the cameras don't reach. There are morgues below deck and a jail cell. We get at least 3 deaths on board a month. Some people go on a cruise to die. No, I do not know where Jack Rose is. They're not real people. I've heard from a friend who is a policeman that there are morgues on cruise ships, mostly for old people who died regularly in their slumber. More people are choosing to retire on cruise ships as it's cheaper than a home and there is always a doctor on board. I did a 6-month contract on a cruise ship in the Caribbean, can confirm everything everyone else has said about the boozing and sexting. Every day after work it was straight to the crew bar for $1 drinks. We would drink almost every night. I'd wake up in the morning and roll out of bed hungover and be on the job 5 minutes later, looking like death warmed up. It's such a small microcosm to live in. Everyone is having sex, and when people do get into relationships, they call it a ship thing, meaning the relationship's life expectancy isn't expected to last past the cruise ship contract. I'm an exception to that rule. My wife and I met on the ship and made it past and are currently living happily ever after. I worked as a seasonal worker on a cruise ship and it was super fun. The crew was almost all young and the bar below deck was incredibly cheap. However, the reason it was so cheap is that most of the staff got paid almost nothing and had to do long stints in order to have their flight paid for. I would fly down during holidays for cruises as short as 1 week and then get flown back. For me it wasn't that different from being a passenger. I could eat in the same restaurants as the passengers and I also stayed in a normal cabin. We could order room service if we wanted. The parties were fun because everyone was there alone, so you got accepted pretty quick. The downside was the blatant inequality for the staff from the Philippines. They were required to do 8 months work at a time with almost no time off, while I would be flown back and forth for a week simply because I was from Canada. It was the worst job I've ever had in my life. Some bullet points: if you get fired, the line I worked for would kick you off on whatever island they docked at next. Sounds fair, but some of these kids had just started working and had no money saved up that could get them home. I did not have a single day off my entire 5-month contract, and not only that, we worked split shifts, anywhere from 12-17 hours a day. You saw these amazing places from a porthole. I got off the ship like 3 times. But yes, everyone banged. The percentage of people with an STD triples when you compare entry versus exit tests. Lots of freakiness. I hooked up with a girl in one bunk while her roomie did the same with my buddy. Lots of drinking. I was a musician on a cruise ship in the show band. First of all, everyone is happy because everyone there has a job. Basically what goes on is a ton of partying and fun, and sex with other crew. I worked for NCL, and in the time I was there only a few crew members had sex with passengers, and they all got canned immediately. I remember in the mandatory training you have to do when you first get on, the instructor warned everyone about fooling around with passengers, but then reminded us that every crew member had a full physical and can only be working on the ship if they're STD free. So for us to have fun that way, one thing passengers don't really think about is that almost no doors lock. They can't have locks in cases of emergency, so if you're curious and sneaky you can get into almost any part of the ship at night. Dear editors who are now dreaming of a life of banging away like rabbits while they work on a cruise ship and drink for $2 a pop, wrap your crap the frick up. Otherwise you might end up having a baby with the girl who is from South Africa and lives 10,000 miles away from you, and you'll have to pay child support and never get to see your kid. Source: my stupid fricking brother. I did 4 years on many ships ranging from Carnival to Regent 7 Seas. I worked in the shops and in entertainment as a host. I've read a lot of the comments and they really do mirror the myriad of experiences I had myself. Every contract is different though, just as every ship is. I worked on the same ship twice, a few contracts apart, and had vastly different experiences both times. Would I do it again? Maybe. It's tough to put the real world on hold. Favorite ship: Celebrity Mercury. Favorite contract: first contract, Carnival Inspiration. Least favorite contract: fourth, also the Inspiration. Best coning place: middle of the main stage. Favorite pastime: darts and beer. I can't play darts unless I'm drunk out of my tree. Most memorable experience: thinking I was hardcore enough to keep up with the crew members in a Jaeger drinking contest and the puking down the crew stairs and having to hide in the guest hallway so security didn't catch me, all on my first day. Also, while I was hiding, heard a pair of dancers in the crew stairwell exclaiming enthusiastically about the volume and spread of said vom-voms. My younger brother has been off and on with a major cruise line for the past 5 or so years. He's considered a junior officer because he's a technical specialist and gets treated much better than 99% of the employees. I lived behind the scenes with him for a week and it was an amazing culture to integrate into. I do not want to speak for him, however, and I don't think he'll have a chance to read it while this is current. Suffice to say that cruise ship employees work their asses off. More hours than many will ever experience, and the lowest ranking do the most work while they live the poorest. I went on a cruise in January, Princess, San Francisco to Hawaii 15 days, and a crew member jumped off the ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We never found him. I'm sure no one will even read this, but here goes. Most of the comments I've been reading are from first or second contract employees. I can just tell by their enthusiasm for the job. It's not as great as it may seem. 7 years on cruise ships here. I've seen it all. Common misconceptions and questions I get all the time from friends, family. Yes, we do get to get off the ship, depending on your job. I'm a musician on board. If you have free time while in port, you get to get off the ship and explore. Just be back 30 minutes before the ship leaves or else your butt is fired. Waiters, galley, etc. do not have as much free time. No, we do not eat the same food as the passengers. Most two-stripe employees can eat at the specialty restaurants and buffets for a price, but the food we get in the mess in a bit lower quality. The companies are allocated $X per employee per day, and it's something like $30. They buy in bulk, they cook in bulk, they feed us in bulk. It's a win-win for the company. The employees are really just a number to the company, and it's getting worse and worse by the year. Cruise ships are cutting corners and investors will threaten to sell off their shares if X amount of money doesn't get saved every month. So we're becoming more and more of a commodity. Can this position net us X amount of money? No? Okay. Get rid of them. Oh, and by the way, to compensate, we need to make this position do their work. Which is why a lot of the time you'll see casino staff greeting guests as they come back on board, a position originally set for cruise staff. But if there are 3 less cruise staff per ship, and they are busy with on-board activities, then they need to fill the gaps. Truth be told, it's an ugly business. I have a buddy from India who works 12 hours a day for $650 a month washing the crew members' dishes. Moving up the corporate ladder is almost impossible for him, since he's from India. Labor laws are non-existent. We're in international waters, so anything goes. We can't do drugs. We can't bring them on board, although people do get away with it. Cruise lines are getting more and more strict with the alcohol policies. We are no longer allowed to bring alcohol back on board from port. We used to be able to do this. Now we are forced to buy alcohol on board, so essentially, the crew members have become a source of income for the company. There is so much more, but in the end, it's just like everything else. It's just as crappy as it is great. It's a great way to get paid to travel, socialize, network, etc. Great mind-broadening experience, that's for sure. A friend of mine was a trumpet player for a cruise ship band. He said the gig was really sweet at first. Hang out all day, people watch, play a 4-hour gig at night, drink a lot. He said that there was a ton of recreational sex within crew members, but he did grow weary of it after about 6 months. He ended up getting fired after jizzing on a female's pillow as a prank. I worked for 8 years on cruise ships for DCL, Celebrity, Hal and Regent. Obviously I love it, but I had a good job with good perks. If I wasn't married and expecting, I would go back. There are no big scandals or secrets. We work hard and play hard. I played a lot harder than I worked. It's well published about how some positions, nationalities, work hard for very little money and others make really good money. I've always wanted to work on a cruise ship. I come from an entertainment operator background. How well do the tech guys who run the shows get treated? I have a friend who plays guitar on cruise ships for about half of the year. He says he can wake up whenever he wants and do whatever he wants until about 5 PM. From then he said the band just drinks and plays music until 4 in the morning. Wash, rinse, repeat. I worked on a now defunct cruise line for old people that went up and down the US East Coast. It was a bunch of fun until I messed my back up and had to be sent home. My cruise ship was small, like the size of most of the big ships, rescue boats small. It was also for retired folk, so there wasn't much fraternizing with the guests. We worked long hours. It was hard work, and because the ship was so small, it felt like family. We all knew each other very well and it was exactly like you'd expect a large extended family to be. We either liked each other or we hated each other, depending on how well the cruise was going. Our food was awesome. We got food made by the cooks for the guests because the ship was so small, so everything was amazing. We could even stick the extra diners not eaten by the guests to the side and eat that. So I ate duck breast, Maine lobster for a month when we finally made it to Maine. We had to do everything together as a ship. Before every cruise, we carried all the supplies for the cruise in. All the food, toiletries, bows, paint for the ship. Everything was carried in and the ship was turned over in the 12 hours between guests leaving and new guests arriving. It was insanely busy. I remember it fondly, though. I got to see a lot of the US. I met some really awesome people. I wouldn't ever work for a large cruise ship, though. I worked on ships for 5 years. Some things you should know. 1. We party harder than guests. Every night. For 8 months straight. 2. We pay less for booze. About $1 for a beer and $1.50 for liquor. 3. Like everyone else, we are in it for the money. I don't give a frick if you enjoy your cruise vacation. I'm here to get paid and that's it. 4. If you're in butthole, cabin stewards will drop your toothbrush into the toilet. Don't be in butthole. 5. When we have all crew drills, most of us are still drunk from the night before. 6. The pretty girl from some exotic country is most likely a W who slept with 10 guys in 2 weeks. 7. The handsome guys whose hand you shook probably just jerked off 30 minutes before that and hasn't washed his hands. 8. Every crew member hates the Black Eyed Peas. Tonight's going to be a good night. We're forced to listen and dance to it multiple times a week. We hate the song and you for loving it. 9. I don't want to talk to you in port. I don't freaking know you. This is the only time off we have all week, and you're forcing me to smile and pretend I give a crap about your 12-year-old getting her hair braided or your husband getting lost while you were shopping in Mexico. We both know he was at a brothel. 10. Your special week is just a repeat of last week for us. We saw and do the same crap over and over and over, and most of it you eat it up like the 10,000 calories you consume on our ships every day. 11. The food has an extra bit of oil and fat in it to make your crap soft. This is done to reduce the stain on the ship's plumbing. You seem to be a bit bitter. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.